Hey everybody, it's Vi here, and today what I want to do is kind of enlighten you guys on some key concepts about defaulting that I don't think a lot of coaches talk about in videos like this on YouTube. They definitely kind of talk about it on streams and stuff like that, but I have a lot of macro experience, right? And what do they say, right? You can't do teach, so I figured since we're moving into a open circuit style of esports system coming into the new year, I figured just kind of dumping all of the knowledge that I've learned about competing, about Valorant, and giving that to you guys so you guys can become better Valorant players than me. And I don't know, maybe win a chip or something. That'd be pretty cool. So today, what we are doing is talking about defaulting and the important concepts that defaulting talks about. Because when you learn one thing in this game, you'll realize that you can apply a lot of things from that piece of macro or piece of micro into different situations throughout the game, right? So it's really important to kind of have a uh, full grasp of what exactly you're doing and why you are doing it. That is always like the most important part about playing games is understanding why you are doing something. If you understand why you are doing something, you'll be able to apply the knowledge that you learned in a wider spectrum of situations rather than just doing what you saw pro players do or doing what you were told to do by your coach. So basically what I have here is some lines, right? So yellow represents exec lines. Essentially what this means is these are the lines of no return. Most likely if you see someone past this or you are going past it, you are most likely going to be hitting that bomb site, right? Now, I will say that B is a little different, right? And these lines move, right? So, for example, if you throw a omen smoke here, this yellow line would move to here and here, right? But for the most part, these are the default exec lines on the map of Haven. And then the green lines, which I removed one down here for some reason, are the space given to the defenders. So basically, how Valorant is balanced because defending is a lot harder than offense most of the time. The way that they balance that is by giving the defense far more space and more control across the map off of the barrier drop than the attackers. So that is what defending is all about mainly is A, removing these green lines and pushing them back as far as possible, right? Or B, pressuring these exec lines, right? Because the closer you get to these lines, the more rotations you will pull, right? And we're going to kind of talk and we're going to pretend that the defenders that we are playing against are going to be rotating properly, which most likely won't happen when you're playing against tier 3 or even tier 2 teams sometimes don't rotate properly, right? There's a lot of pressure and stress when you're in an environment, especially when you're playing for something, when you're playing for money, when you're playing for points, things like that, right? So how you can kind of apply this into a default, right, is removing these green lines. So, for example, when I think the easiest way to kind of demonstrate a default is to go into a 4-1, right? This is kind of the classic rankers way of defaulting. A lot of teams, especially like tier 2 and tier 1 teams, instantly jump to defaulting in like 1-3-1s or 3-2s or, different variations of this. But you have noticed probably throughout the past year that a lot of VCT teams that have shown and exhibited success are teams that don't do that as much. And a lot of the time they stick to very classic 4-1s. They stick to very classic, just like 5-man controls towards sites and things like that, right? And it all kind of depends on a lot of different factors. But for the most part, the 4-1, I think, is something that you as a player and your team, right, needs to be good at because it basically gives you the highest likelihood of succeeding on the um threatened side of the map, right? So, also it kind of leaves like something important that is a concept that I'll just say it right now. So basically, on defense, right? Realistically, out of when they have 5 people spread across, I'll use blue. When they have 5 people spread across, right? They're gonna have maximum 3 on a bomb site. So even if you lose your lurker, so let's say your lurker dies here front B and you're going C, for the most part, right? You have 4 players going towards the C bomb site, meaning that you should win the numbers advantage, right? And when you win this numbers advantage, right, and it goes down to a 1v2, what happens is if you plant the spike, that instantly goes to a 2v2. Okay. The reason why this is the spike is a variable, and that's essentially what every player is, right? Every player is a variable on the round. So the more variables there are, you can essentially equate them to having players, right? I think util is also really good in this situation. So for example, right, like if the last player is a chamber, right, he has a TP. That's a variable, right? But if you have flashes and you have smokes, that's a variable, right? Like for example, in this 2v2, right, where the spike is that, right? You can kind of remove the spike by smoking, making it, a 3v2, right? And things like that. So that's a very important kind of concept to be aware of. And I think it's also very simple and very easy to understand. So how we would do this 4-1, right? So we're going to use the meta comp right now for the example, which is essentially the 100 Thieves comp, where you're going to have 2 duelists, an Omen, a Sova, and a Cypher. For the most part, the 2 duelists are usually going to be Neon and Phoenix. The reason why is those are just the best duelists in the game. On a lot of maps, in my opinion, you can basically run it on any map in this game. Double Duelist is always going to be better than other comps because Double Duelist is more simple. And how you should kind of play Valorant, in my opinion, is you should always try to play to simplicity and overall team strength rather than macro and super complex like comp ideas. And the reason why is macro changes on a map to map basis for the most part. Now, Haven, I think, is a different story to that. So, for example, the main macro around Haven is removing these lines. Now, the reason why is a lot of teams, realistically, C is the easiest site to uh to play retake and to give. So because of that, right, a lot of teams don't commit a lot of bodies over towards C. And the reason why this is a problem is if you hit C and no one dies, the likelihood of you losing this retake is very high because C is just the easier site to retake. In comparison to A, where it's very hard to retake, you have a single choke point to go out of, or you have to jump out of heaven, which is always a risk, right? And it adds a lot of layers and it makes things difficult. So if you can pressure the A side of the map and force them to kind of hard sink themselves into that bomb site, you can get free kills because a lot of people will fight A before you even get a chance to exec. Secondly, you are basically asserting that you are going to be able to take this site completely for free and use your utility to push past, right? To take garage, to take CT into B link, things like that, right? So that's very important. So on a default, on a 4-1, essentially what you do is you start out like this, right? And the main macro of Haven is to eliminate these green lines, right? This is all defensive space. And if you don't eliminate this defensive space, you literally at the start of the round have one person sit here. And if this is never punished, they just rotate over towards C and B, right? And that's not what you want to see, right? You want them to stay towards A for as long as possible. So a lot of teams will throw this. This was discovered by Oxygen a few years ago when Dapper Dapper, Verno, Redux, like that kind of era. I think, what was his name? The IGL that played for Mitch. I think Mitch was also on this Oxygen team, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so basically what you do is you throw this default Omen smoke, and what that does is instantly puts this green line all the way back here. This is really bad for the defenders, um, obviously, because being in this position kind of warrants you having to play short. And the problem with this is most of the time on A, you're not doubling up, right? And if you're not doubling up, taking this fight in like a 1vx situation is very disadvantageous for you as a defender. So, really, a lot of teams want to just avoid taking fights and just leaving a single guy on A. Because if they leave a single guy on A, you can just rotate because of how long it takes to get to the site. With Neon, it's a little different, right? Because Neon disrupts that timing. But for the most part, that's kind of how this works. Now, obviously, there is kind of the counterplay to this, aka pushing the green line back here by going into the smoke. This is something that players will do, especially if they're playing something like a Phoenix or like a Jet, right? Where they have the ability to get out and avoid this. But for the most part, what you kind of want to do is understand that. So you've pushed the green line to back here, which is far greater, right? Now, another thing that is very common for teams is to throw the recon bolt right down here instantly. The reason why is a lot of the time you don't use recons to hit sites on this map. You don't really need to. The reason why is the defenders and the way that they have to play these bomb sites have to cut up the bomb site for you. So you can take different sections of the bomb site, especially if you have a Phoenix or you have a Neon, you have an Omen, things like that, right? So by doing this, you are pushing the green line basically to here, right? Which I know doesn't seem like a lot, but, right, this is the worst case scenario. The best case scenario, you're pushing the green line all the way like back here or to right here, right? So worst case scenario, you're moving it here, but for the most part, you're pushing it down here. Now, this can be accompanied with a Phoenix volley, right? For example, if you are getting aggressive over into a lobby and you're pushing towards short, a single hot hands, right, can clear out this position. Now, with these two pieces of util, you 100% push them back towards this line because standing in the open in this hallway is very bad unless they're playing something like a chamber. This is why it's really important to see like who you're playing against to know whether your macro will work against them or it won't. Again, that's why Valorant is very complicated. That's also why when metas happen, most of the time teams like Nongshim or Genji become extremely dominant because when everyone's playing the same thing, it's literally up to who shoots the gun better in this game, right? So if you're dual matched, right, and you're mirror matched, it's whoever shoots the gun better. That's all that is because the macro works the same exact way, according to one team or another. Whereas a team like Loud, who likes to play the chamber instead, disrupts that macro in comparison to 100 Thieves, which is why I think that 13-10 where 100 Thieves kind of slipped against Loud, when they were playing this map specifically, kind of changed, right? It's because Loud and their comp disrupts the macro of this map and changes it a lot with the chamber. So, by pushing this line, right, you are doing the optimum default, right? Now, a thing that will 100% secure this is going here. The reason why is if you're playing a Phoenix and you can pull out this A smoke, right? And you'll notice a lot of teams will do this. That is their condition to stop their defaulting is to get this smoke out, right? Is if you can get this smoke out, what you do, right, is, for example, you push the green line all the way back here because they could be in this position. But what you also do is you extend the exec line to around the smoke. The reason why is because you have Phoenix Flash. That's why flash agents are always really important in Valorant, and it's also why someone like Breach, right, is very difficult to get into a meta because he doesn't have the ability to do this, right? Whereas Yoru, Phoenix, KO, Sky, all of those agents have the ability to use smokes and pop out of them and change where they can exec from. Whereas Breach, you have essentially the same exec line because you're not like, look at this area to flash. It's really bad because you have to shoot through walls, right? It's not great. Whereas Phoenix can pixel perfect throw a flash out of this smoke and full blind you, and you almost have like no chance to react to that flash. So here we go. This is the basic concept of defaulting, is pushing these exec lines back and also limiting the defender's space, right? Now, obviously, the caveat to this is you want to try to be able to do it with the least amount of utility possible. Another thing here, for example, right, is on C. The reason why teams really don't default C is you'll be hard pressed to find a defender throwing this smoke. Very rare. Doesn't happen a lot. Now, where the smoke is thrown is here, right? By the way, this is always how you want to throw this site smoke. If you're a defender, the reason why is it gives you some really weird fights that the other team isn't ready for. Also helps your site player live, and it kind of makes it to where, like, you know, if you're throwing it like this, that gives them the ability to move around backside, whereas you want them to not be able to do that as much as possible. So with this smoke, right, what this does is it doesn't change the exec line, right? It doesn't. It doesn't move these at all. So because of that, defaulting C is pretty difficult. Now, if a team is willing and does with like maybe a single cipher cam, smoke this is better for you. You can just leave. You've done everything possible to achieve that, right? You've done everything. So let's go into how you would change mid, right? So let's go to the one guy. We've kind of already discussed how this would go, right? Most of the time, you're going to have your Neon and your Omen towards long, and then you have your Phoenix here and your Sova here. And then obviously, right, so let's say that the smoke is still here, or if it's not here, one thing that you can do with Omen, by the way, is you can just throw this smoke. You can also get a little farther up, and you can throw the smoke, the flash like this, so it clears this corner, it clears all, you have to adjust a little bit, it clears all of short, this corner, like it clears a little bit into the smoke. But for the most part, you're going to do this if there's a guy here, or you're just going to save your Omen flash for the retake because you have a relay bolt that's going to land here and it's going to land hell. And then you'd have like a hot hands that would land like right here or maybe even in the smoke or something, and then you flash out of it and stuff like that, right? Also, don't be afraid to just sit one guy in the smoke, throw the hot hands towards CT so they can't flood, flash out here like this, and then you go off of the stun, so stun flash, and then you go out, and then you guys just double pinch this area, whatever, right? Anyway, so as a cipher, what exactly are you doing, right? Well, for the first part, right, you're throwing a trip, and most of the time, as a lurker, right, you can kind of throw the just like default cipher trips every round. It doesn't matter. They will get value one way or another. You guys and like this pack and you need to be aware of where your Jet, your Yoru, and your Chamber and your Omen is on the other team. Because if you spot them in no position to flank, then you know that the trip is secure, right? If you don't spot them, then you have to have someone kind of checking that, and that's usually towards this guy over towards long. Usually I would like someone like a Neon or mainly just like a Neon in this position to sit here. And the reason why is the rest of you are going to be playing with utility and stuff like that, whereas Neon doesn't really have utility to help stop the hit most of the time. You're going to use duelist utility on execs. So yeah. So what you can do here, right, is you can throw this cam. And this cam instantly moves these lines towards here and roughly here, right? This opens up a lot for the defenders, right? Because if they don't break this cam and they leave it untested, then essentially what you do is secure the middle of the map heavily. Now, I think this is good, but I think one of them is debatably better, right? So sometimes things in this game are kind of deceptive. That's exactly what this garage line is, right? The reason why it's deceptive is if you can get this area, right? You can secure this area and you can push this line to like here. You guarantee that this line is pointless because you can always be here in this area, right? You can always be in this area as a attacker. So what I like to do personally is I'm a big fan of just running up and camming like this off of a jiggle. I think camming here is a little better than camming here just because a lot of times players aren't in this position to break it, meaning that they are going to be pushed here. And this is the fight that you want to take, in my opinion. Taking this fight is bad. Taking this close angle fight against this guy who's bottom B is a lot better, right? So once you do this, and you can also throw like a cipher cage if you really want to, and you can throw it like here. I don't think that's particularly great. I think not cage. I don't think you really need to throw cages. The only cages that I would ever throw is here from B. If you throw cages like this, and you break a tripwire or you break an alarm bot or whatever, it really kind of fucks things up because you can pop out of this with Phoenix or Neon or like an Omen Flash towards one side, stuff like that, right? It gets really confusing and really messes them up, right? Now, for you, when you are lurking, your goal on defaulting is to get as deep as possible. So if you can just sit here the whole round, you're winning. The reason is if you don't hear anything in this position, I don't know why I'm using green. If you don't hear anything here, right, you know that they're rotating deep, CT, or they're flanking, but you have a trip, right? So that's kind of your whole goal. And then another tip for lurking, right, is we're going to set up kind of an idea, right? So for example, let's say the enemy Omen is rotating, right? Let's say he's C-Link. It is not optimal for you to take this fight here because he is going to be pre-aiming you. Another thing is the way when you take fights is, for example, if your Phoenix is popping out on A, right, and pressuring the A guys, that is your opportunity to fight this guy. Whereas if you guys are just getting up short, right, and you guys are like right here, this is not your opportunity to take the lurk timing. The reason why is the way people's brains work is the threat, right, is always assessed and then focused on. So, for example, when they're rotating and there's no threat going on, aka no one pushing these exec lines, they are completely focused on the one threat that they know could happen, aka the lurk. Whereas if your teammates are pressuring these yellow lines here, the exec lines, they're focusing on that more than focusing on you. Now, obviously, you're going to get diligent players that know this and can think about it proactively and be like, no, I need to focus on just killing this guy. But a lot of time when you're playing ranked, you're playing whatever, that is your opportune time. That is the best time to take this fight. So that's kind of all I have on defaulting. This is going to be these are going to be long videos. Feel free to, fucking 2 times speed these things, right? But I hope that I can help you guys understand a little bit about Valorant defaulting and how to manipulate the enemy team and play better. So stay tuned for more videos. I hope you guys have a great day. Win some ranked games. Peace.